the power of bringing this education into mind-body education. I know you're very deeply in that, into the schools and to the hospitals and to the world. I know you've been a nurse. And today we're going to talk about very interesting subject, spiritual blueprinting.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think it is certainly the way to go. We need our children to be exposed to this so early on so that it becomes a part of their lives. It becomes ingrained in their way of being. You know, for us, we started in a different place and kind of made our way. And certainly my life, you know, reflects a huge transition because I was in the healthcare system, traditional healthcare, and I worked primarily with health organizations. I worked at the Fox Chase Cancer Center, where back in the late 70s started the first multidisciplinary cancer care teams, which was amazing. And then I worked for the American Cancer Society and Prevent Blindness America. So I worked with a lot of health organizations, but back when I worked for the American Cancer Society, if I had been doing what I do now, I would be one of their unproven methods. But I know that our lives bring us forward in many ways that are just inspiring. And so when we discover more about who we are, and I talk about how we discover our divine blueprint, so that we can be authentic and in alignment with the truth of our being, that we can discover our higher purpose and fulfill that and bring forth amazing things to the universe. I just know that opportunities like this make such a huge difference. So I know you wanted to hear about spiritual blueprinting. And before, do you mind if I mention a little bit about my blueprint for the human spirit first? Because that is why I'm here and how this spiritual blueprinting came to be. So,
well, you know that I'm a big fan of all your work. And
yes, of course.
tell us, before you do
Yes.
that, tell us a
Yes,
little about your
she
book.
wrote an intro for my wonderful book, The Dance of Ego and Essence, Confessions of a Divine Diva. And so for that, I am eternally grateful because that truly was a transforming experience. That was my private journal, which I was told to share with the universe. But my life took a huge turn. I was raised in a very fundamental Christian home and church. When I went to college, left that behind, became a driven career person and had many expanding leadership opportunities, which were phenomenal, until I was the program director for Prevent Blindness America for the whole country. They gave me an opportunity to go to the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. And if you haven't heard of that, and I'm not even sure what they're still doing these days, but it was a transforming experience. It was when I went down a different path. And shortly after attending that program, I had a vision while I was there and realized that my job, which was really important part of me, was no longer compatible with my new vision. So I quit, walked away from the whole healthcare system and became a seeker, and eventually received some amazing information that, in a series of divine downloads, like dreams, so to speak. And in the process, everything came together into this beautiful whole. And so I was given the gift of what I call the blueprint for the human spirit. And as it came to me one step at a time, one concept at a time, with sacred geometry and in kind of this beautiful matrix format, I realized how powerful that was. And at the same time, I received another divine download where I realized that I was highly intuitive. And coming from a traditional healthcare background where I was so rational and logical and science-based and skeptical, it was quite a shift for me to be able to embrace that. So if any of you have been through that process of where you leave traditional ideas and beliefs behind and shift over to a new way of being, you understand how challenging that can be. Well, what happened with regard to the spiritual blueprinting process is I would be awakened, and in the mornings, of course, information would flow in. I'd get up and share it. But I started thinking also about family members and friends who had issues. And I found myself moving energy around. And then I discovered that I could talk about what I experienced. And I spoke in first person, which cued me into the concept that we truly are one, and that my healing is your healing, is the healing of the world. And so I was able then to share this gift with people on a one-to-one basis. And it's very unusual because it is a way that my body goes into motion. I become like a mirror and do psycho spiritual mirroring, so to speak. And every motion and every position represents something different. And it's always different for every person. So issues will come up and we'll gain clarity on that. And then guidance is received on how to shift from a negative into a higher way of understanding and being. And what I've discovered in most cases is that it only requires a shift in perception for healing to occur. And when I talk about healing, I'm talking about total health and wellness, not just physical. And I never know if a physical, mental, emotional, intuitive, or spiritual issue is going to arise. And I never know if it's going to be something from the present or something from the future, or even something from the past or the distant past, or a past life, or even something that is more intergenerational. So I just allow it to come through. But what I have learned has changed my whole perspective on healing from when I was a nurse and in the healthcare system, because I recognize the limitations that we have in the healthcare system. And certainly what I discovered is that, we mentioned, someone mentioned about stress, and I forget exactly which one of the presenters did, but
Bill Douglas.
Bill, okay, yes, Bill, because if we're not in alignment, if our body, mind, heart, soul is not in alignment, there is stress. And also somebody mentioned about, I think it was Bill again, how the physicians who have personal experience with alternative and holistic practices are so much more supportive of them and engaging with them. And that is why my focus is on an individual level. I believe and know from experience that if we become our best selves, if we present the best of ourselves to the world, that is the greatest gift that we can give. And so I challenge everybody to, work on themselves first, and because we can't change anybody else. But by raising our awareness, certainly we can elevate the consciousness of the world. And healing also, I know from experience, is an inside job. And we may go to a physician or other healthcare individuals to help us, but it's what's going on within us. They can only help us activate our own inner healing system, our own healing that's inherent within us. So that is another core shift in how I perceive healthcare today. And healing is holistic. I also believe that when we just focus on even the body, even the mind changing how we believe and what we understand about ourselves, about our bodies, about the world, about how we feel about things, that is still sometimes not going deeply enough, because almost all issues that I have seen in the world stem from the belief in separation and duality. And when we see ourselves as separate from others, from a higher power, so to speak, or others in humanity, then that separation leads to attachments and to addictions and to all kinds of behaviors and beliefs that are non-conducive to health and wellness. So all of these different changes, things just kind of popped for me as I learned more about the blueprint for the human spirit, and I engaged in this process of spiritual blueprinting. So there's a lot more about it, but it's a very interesting process because, you're into dance, and certainly I have never been trained in that or trained in drama or anything, but it's like very dramatic because my body goes into motion when I do my healing work. And I wanted to just share with you, if you have a moment, about something that happened to me personally. So I know for a fact how powerful this kind of process is. I had been caring for a family member for a number of months, and it was very stressful. I had a huge Charlie horse in my back. I couldn't get rid of it. I tried everything from heat, massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, whatever. And it would keep me awake. I was awake in the middle of the morning, about 3 o'clock, when a lot of wonderful things happen. And I was just like, I was just in agony. And the night before, I'd tried a glass of wine and that didn't help, So this night I'm sitting there and I says, and I just said, help me. And this voice said, well, you do healings, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I do. So I engaged in this process where I opened myself and just affirm I am open, ready, and willing, So the next thing I know, I was bowing. Yes, master. Yes, master. Yes, master. And there was this amazing idea that I was a slave and that I had to say yes to everyone. And then something said, no, you don't have to do that. And I said, okay, no, and then I got up out of my chair. I mean, I'm in this altered state, and I went to the doorway of my office and my room, and I knew exactly what to do and how to move and how to turn and what to do. Took a hold of the doorway in a different way and just twisted, and it was like, well, that was easy. This was a whole different way. Then I went into my kitchen where I have an island, and I was running around the island. This is in the middle of the night. I had company, and I'm running around the island. And every time I came to a corner, I would grab a hold of it and pull, kind of stretch out a little more and say, yes, 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 all the way around. So I went from saying, yes, master, to saying no, to saying yes to something else. And then after I did that, I was whirling like a dervish, and I was so free, and everything just kind of flew away, and I was so free. And in that moment, all of that pain, all of the stress, all of the tension went away, and I've never had that problem again. But this is kind of the power that we can have if we open ourselves to higher guidance and to ourselves. And it showed me also the circle of power, which is part of the blueprint for the human spirit. Because we're slaves and victimized in slavehood, then we become, we say no so that we can say yes to something better and something higher until we are free to be all that we are. So that is just an example of how this kind of process might work, and how wild and out there it is. It isn't anything that anybody ever trained me to do. It totally is just a gift that came to me. I have not researched it or tried to prove it works, because I just trust it and know that it does. And certainly I've worked with a number of clients that have had life-changing, instantaneous healings as a result.
There's Pam, there's a study that kind of parallels somewhat what you're saying, and that is that the research shows that people that meditate are more likely to actualize the lives that they desire. And, it makes me think that part of it is what you're talking about. And Keith kind of talked about this as well, kind of what led you, Keith, to doing what you're doing right now. You kind of followed these steps. And you're talking about that too, Pam, where you kind of cut loose from the program.
Yes.
And you started following these steps. And I think, going into alpha state, these mind body practices, they can facilitate us, letting go of what is, so that we can open up to what we might become, like you're saying. And, and then that's when the magic happens. And that's a big problem with society right now. And a lot of it's the media. I actually get into this in my book about how the media is like fear and panic driven. That's how they get their viewership. It's all business practices. But teaching in hospitals, I see how it stresses people out, because a lot of the patients in my classes, they watch news all day long. And so they get this real kind of limited, dismal picture of the future. And the science shows that our image of the future is one of the biggest indicators of what our future will become. And so I think it's so important for the mind-body community to realize that we're a huge resource in the planet, because we're imparting things to people that will help their minds let go of the programming that you're kind of talking about. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree
Yes.
completely. Bill, you just brought up what I was going to bring up. I see people around me in such deep depression.
right.
Even here, where we're really in touch with nature, because how would you describe it? What's being fed to us right now by the media is so dark.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, there are people out there today. I heard about, someone, I don't even want to mention who she is, some big leader person, saying that it's time to get rid of all the elders, that we're like a waste of time on the planet.
Well, and those kind of alarmist kind of comments from people, that's what's on the news, and it's like a lot of news programs, a lot of mainstream news programs, they'll quote somebody that, just some average person that posted something on Twitter that's outrageous. Well, news report to the world, there's going to be people saying outrageous things, but do they deserve to be front and center in the media? You know what I mean? Because there's so many solutions that we need to be talking about, and there's just no room for that. And that was one of the reasons we created World Tai Chi Day, because we wanted to create some public spectacle that was healing and connective for the planet, that we could get into that media sphere, so that it wouldn't all just be the fear-driven stuff, that people would actually see, a global community of people all coming together and doing something for health and expansion. And so part of it was to actually, do our little part to change that, that drumbeat of the media, that's just all, what they do is they know that if they create these biochemical stress triggers, you get addicted to watching the programming, and then you keep coming back. And so that's why those alarmist headlines, the clickbait headlines, and it's always upsetting stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it's the other thing is that being around people, I'm finding, who are addicted, it's an addicting thing. It's addicting to the fear.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you, Pamela, how do you keep that from kind of infecting you?
Yes. Well, I turned off the TV.
Yay.
I mean, I may live in la la land, but I can't live with that negativity. And I spend quiet time, and I'm not good at it because I'm kind of hyper, but I have a way of connecting and making sure that I am tapped in. And when I don't do that, I suffer. and I lose my energy, I lose my, focus. But I think it's important that we have our own ways. And so many times, for many years, I followed everybody else's practices. And then I realized that I had my own inner guru. And so I let go of that. And I think we have to learn how to trust that too, because we're not just clones, and our way is going to be different from everybody else's. And we have all of our own unique gifts and ways that we can share. And so I think we have to learn how to trust ourselves and trust the source of that, and not question as much. It took me quite a while to kind of go with it, because I thought I needed a guru, and I asked for one once. I wrote an affirmation in my journal. I says, a guru is coming into my life now, and this voice said, well, what am I, chopped liver? It's like, you're here. I'm here. And so you just kind of allow yourself. But we need a whole new model for healthcare. We need a model for education. We need a model for parenting. We need a model for how we engage in relationships. And the blueprint for the human spirit showed me how it all fit together. It provided me with this beautiful way that we can live consciously and compassionate and authentically and creatively, so that we eventually, those of us when we reach this stage in our lives, leave a legacy of love and truly make a difference. That is what we are doing together.
Pam, you've mentioned, I've been wanting to mention this, you've mentioned compassion several times. And one of the studies that I have in the new second edition of the Gospel of Science is they were looking at people's DNA expression. And they did an experiment where they had people practicing selfish hedonistic pleasures and then practicing altruistic pleasures. And they both reported like the same kind of high, kind of uplift feeling, but the DNA knew the difference. And when they were practicing hedonistic selfish pleasures, the health expression of the DNA degraded, more inflammation. When they were practicing altruistic pleasures, where they were benefiting the greater good with no compensation for it, their DNA expressed more healthfully, less inflammation. And so from the very core of our being, compassion is woven into the fabric of the universe. And I think the meditation helps connect us to that. And one of the other studies I was going to tell you about was they found that when people practice mind-body practices, the part of the brain that feels isolated becomes less active, and the part of the brain that feels connected becomes larger and more active.
Yes. And it doesn't take huge things to make a difference. A breath can make a difference. A smile can make a difference. Looking into somebody's eyes can make a difference. There's just so many simple things that we can do. And I think sometimes we make it harder than it really needs to be. And so I think when we pause in the moment, come to this still point, instead of reacting, and bring everything into alignment, I think that can make a difference. And I know that meditation, yoga, all these practices do make a difference. So we find our own, we find our way, we do that. And one person at a time, with passion, like our host Sharon, and with love, we make a difference. We make
Alan Watts, he I think that anytime we go into the alpha state, and when we meditate, we're not there all the time, our mind wanders and stuff, but we'll have those moments, where the mind will just kind of get in the flow and the drift. We go into that alpha state. And I think that's a form of extraordinary consciousness experience. Now there's many levels of it. And I think you were talking about your own personal extraordinary consciousness experience that got you on your path. But anyway, Alan Watts said something that really stuck with me. And I didn't realize it when I was reading and studying his stuff decades ago. But then just when I was watching on YouTube, I was watching an Alan Watts interview, and I found out that he had had extraordinary consciousness experiences, several of them. And he said that one of the things that's very common for people when they come back from an extraordinary consciousness experience is to see the divine in everybody's eyes.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we need to do. We need to look in the mirror until we can see it in ourselves, and then look into the eyes of the others until we see it in them as well. See beyond the behaviors that we may not appreciate, and see that
including
we all,
our own.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do, it's like, yes, but
Yes.
certainly we are, and I like to think we're all divine divas, devos, whatever, and that as we discover our divine blueprint, then we can realize the truth of our being, that we walk between these worlds, part human, part divine. We're on the world, but not of the world. So there are so many things that I think we can do to just uplift humanity. And when we honor who we are and our sacred gifts and develop them and share them in a compassionate way, then that's why we're here. And so I'm blessed to be a part of this and to hear what everybody else is doing. Bless you all for the gifts that you bring and for every moment that you are committed to making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. And how do people find out about your work?
Yes, I am on, I have a website, drpamelagerali.com. There is a free booklet that you can download and get some information, a little bit more about the blueprint. And then I just wrote a blog yesterday about spiritual blueprinting, another blog, and I put a book on there too, a free ebook. It's about 20 some pages with more information about spiritual blueprinting and what it is and how it occurs. You can also reach me and set up sessions, because I do work with individuals, usually with Zoom. So it's a blessing to be of service. And
for all of you out there, especially if you're in the Colorado area, Pamela and I are speaking about putting together a workshop with the two of us.
Yes.
August.
Sometime in late August.
Yes, which is going to
sounds
be
inviting.
fun.
Yes.
So thank you, and stay on, because
Thank you.
we've been talking for weeks now about what my dear friend Jill